There is a. Hold up. The concept of nothing making you happy or satisfied for long. The idea that no thing in the physical universe can give lasting satisfaction. This is something that comes up often in spirituality and often in self help as well. So, what spiritualities or traditions first kind of coined or came up with this idea or term, and how did they come up with it?
Right, so this is a fascinating genealogy question.
Hold on. I hate when it reads it back to me. I want to read it. Da, da, da. Oh, now you're going to search the web. You just had an answer. Whoa. Multiple traditions independently arrived at it. Surprise, surprise. Buddhism is the most precise and systematic early source, but the Greeks got there too, and they came at it from completely different angles. The Buddha named this experience dukkha, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and made it the very first of his noble truths. Delivered in his first sermon after enlightenment around the 5th century BCE, the specific mechanism he identified, tana, a Pali word meaning craving or thirst, the relentless wanting and not wanting that keeps people chasing things that can't deliver peace. We often don't think of wanting in this way, but it's not about wanting things like ice cream, a raise, a vacation, good health, but it's also the not wanting. Wanting the day to be over, wanting to no longer be hungry, wanting your suffering to end, wishing someone wasn't the way that they are. This too is a form of wanting. And this is what he's talking about when he says it creates suffering. The relentless wanting and non wanting that keeps people chasing things that can't deliver lasting peace and ultimately cause what the Buddha called dukkha. And you ain't got to be a Buddhist to see that in action. Buddhism actually breaks this down into three distinct types of dissatisfaction. Wow, very specific. The suffering of obvious pain, the suffering of disappearing happiness. Okay, that's an interesting one. And then experiences that fade when their condition. Oh, explaining that. Pleasant experiences that fade when their conditions change. And the deeper unsatisfactoriness of all impermanent things. The background hum of unease that pervades existence itself. So, looking at these three types of dissatisfaction, the first, the suffering of pain that is here. When you sprain your ankle and that actual pain that you feel in your ankle because shit ain't right, that is a legitimate pain that cannot be avoided. Being sick, the actual nausea, the lightheadedness, the achiness, those are real symptoms of pain or suffering. Now, those are not really avoidable. You know, the saying of the two arrows. You get shot with the first arrow, and that is life. That's the shit you can't avoid. But the second arrow is more of your reaction, your interpretation to that first arrow. Or it could be not an arrow at all, and something good happened. And we often suffer our own happiness when that thing begins to fade. For example, a new relationship. The honeymoon phase, this person is perfect. Oh my gosh, everything is so wonderful. Then what happens over time? It doesn't stay that way. The happiness starts to leave, and then you start to wonder why that is. You think, oh, I thought that was it. I thought that person was going to make me happy. Maybe you went on vacation, having a great time in Cancun at a resort. And then you were so excited for that vacation to get here, and you were looking forward to for months, and then the waiter spills a drink on your shirt. The pool is crowded as hell, and there's mosquitoes everywhere. And it was a lot more expensive than you anticipated. The excursion was double the price, and it wasn't even that good. And the days are going by, and the vacation's almost up. You have 2 days left, and then you have to go back to work. Or the opposite. The vacation was a success all the way through, and it was amazing. And then you're mad or upset that it's over when you're on that plane ride back. And so it's not just the obvious pain, but it's oftentimes things not going the way we want with expectations. It's good things happening and wishing that they would stay longer. And then it is the just unsatisfactory state of things being impermanent, of things constantly going. You can't hold on to the happiness, and you wish the unhappy things or the negative parts would go away now. It's just this constant flux of comings and goings, emotions, highs and lows, and our brains often react to all of it without us really being aware of these underlying mechanisms. The Greeks independently arrived at something strikingly similar, but through philosophy, not meditation. Seneca, the Stoic, wrote about how wealth and luxury only teach you to crave still greater things, essentially describing the same cycle. The earliest Greek philosophical treatment traces back to Aristippus of Cyrene around 435 BC, who framed pleasure and pain as the only real forces driving human behavior. The modern scientific term hedonic treadmill was coined by psychologists Brickman and Campbell in 1971, describing the tendency of people to return to a stable happiness baseline regardless of what happens to them externally. Science basically rediscovered what monks have been saying for 2,500 years. That is a common thread that has come up time and time again, that different spiritualities of thousands of years ago, are repeatable and are backed by science. And it's often because spirituality, unlike many modern takes on spirituality, came about through experience of people praying, meditating, thinking, doing different practices to have a sense of a felt experience, so that they didn't just believe an idea, they came about these ideas through their own firsthand understanding or experience. In the same way we can talk about eating honey and study honey, but we've never tasted it. There's a difference between the experience and a just thought that you've been told. Now, when it comes to this concept of never being satisfied or never being happy, that kind of puts humans in a weird spot. Humans have to have, I'm just going to say this to the AI, I'm curious what it's going to say back. What's interesting about this concept, and that nothing brings lasting satisfaction, is that humans, to some degree, must have a sense of purpose. Even a person in prison who may not have a job or a family in there finds purpose through maybe reading, working out, or maybe having a job in the prison. A person has to have a reason to put their feet on the floor, otherwise most individuals experience a large amount of dissatisfaction. But on the flip side of that, if a person confuses purpose with wanting or thinking that whatever purpose they may have will bring them ultimate fulfillment, then that end of the spectrum is not very fulfilling at all either. So it's like there's this dichotomy, this spectrum from having no purpose at all to having purpose. And then somewhere in the middle, or I don't know, somewhere, there's this idea of wanting external things for validation. So talk about this idea of having no purpose at all and not wanting anything, and how that's not very satisfying, but then always wanting something to be different or wanting something that you don't have also brings about the same result.
Yeah, you're describing something really precise.
I don't like when it talks it back. I'm going to do it myself. We search the web apparently when we do it again. The two failure modes of purpose and the sweet spot between them. Psychology actually has a clean framework for exactly this. There are two distinct types of well-being, and chasing the wrong one or having neither leads to the same place. Why is it not loading here? Yeah, can't connect the cloud. I see that. I see we're having trouble. Let me take a chance and refresh and see how bad it F's up. Oh, there we go. Research distinguishes between hedonic happiness, like the pleasure, enjoyment, avoiding discomfort, and that's a hell of a word, eudaimonic happiness, meaning, purpose, personal growth, living in alignment with values. Studies suggest that hedonic happiness, providing quick bursts that fade fast, while eudaimotic happiness creates deeper, longer-term fulfillment. The trap is that most people pursue the first while hoping it delivers the second. That's interesting. So people often look for the long-term, the deeper fulfillment that we all crave or desire from hedonic things, the pleasure, vacations, bigger or better cars, a bigger house, better jobs, a super attractive partner, all these kinds of almost superficial things that unfortunately are at the forefront or at the front of the stage of society. The modern world and capitalism with businesses and companies often shove these in our faces, whether that be through video games, pornography, food, movies, any type of short-term pleasure, making us feel like we need to have that thing. And social media, seeing what people have and we don't. Those are often superficial things as well. Then on the other hand, meaning, purpose, personal growth. The zero purpose end of the spectrum has a clinical name: existential depression. Defined not as a sadness over specific events, but as an overwhelming sense that life lacks purpose. People experience and often report emptiness and apathy while intellectually understanding their circumstances. They're fully detached from them. The counterintuitive findings studies showed that the eudaimonic motives, purpose-driven, were negatively correlated with depression and stress, while hedonic motives showed no significant correlation with depression either way. In other words, chasing pleasure doesn't protect against depression, but having purpose does. The research from positive psychology suggests that a fulfilling life built around values will actually also yield hedonic pleasure as a byproduct, but not the reverse. So you can't just do hedonic pleasure to, get values. It doesn't work that way. You don't get meaning by stacking up enough good feelings. The problem isn't wanting things, it's wanting external things to do the job that only the internal orientation can do. Purpose works when it points outward, not when it's expected to fill an inner void. Purpose works when it points outward, not when it's expected to fill an inner void. What's interesting to me about this is I think a lot of people, including myself, look for purpose or find purpose in something that can be fulfilling, yet they're expecting it to fill some type of void. They may put purpose into their work or into a podcast and thinking that making it or someday getting to this finish line that they have in their brains is going to fill this inner void. And so it is almost a double-edged sword because you want purpose, yet at the same time, you don't want that purpose to be tied into something that it'll make me more happy in the future.
Right, exactly. You've nailed the trap. And it's particularly insidious because the feeling of having purpose is real and necessary, but the mechanism you're describing, where the void filling happens after you reach the finish line, is essentially guaranteed to fail. The thing is, that's almost a perfect description of what Viktor Frankl called the will to meaning versus the meaning of the will. One is chasing meaning as an outcome. The other is finding meaning in the act itself. The research backs this up too. People who pursue meaning for its own sake report lower depression and stress. People who pursue external goals as a means to feel something report the same dissatisfaction regardless of whether they hit those goals.
Yeah, interesting. And this is something that I've talked about often, and I think it's because it's something that I struggle with. I know conceptually that having purpose, that doing things like working out or trying hard at your job or wanting to be a better listener and to do all these different things is good for you, and it's going to make you a better person. The trap we can get ourselves caught in is thinking essentially that we're going to be a better person, or we're going to be more of a person and have more value. We think it's going to kind of level you up like in a video game. And in a way you are leveling up your skills, but it doesn't increase your value. For some reason, I've struggled with this idea for a long time, thinking that some future thing, some future goal or achievement is going to make me more complete or more whole than I currently am now. That makes perfect sense. I can conceptualize this idea of purpose and making sure to try to remember to put your purpose into whatever act it is itself versus a finish line or result, thinking that whatever outcome or result comes is going to, in a way, make you more complete or more whole than you already are. And for whatever reason, this is something that has plagued me, and I think a lot of people, especially those that are the overachievers, the go-getters, is that they always are chasing this better version of themselves. And while that is good and it can provide a great sense of purpose and fulfillment, especially when you see the progress accumulate year after year. It's a fallacy or a fiction, an illusion to ever think that there will be a finish line that makes you feel more complete or more whole than you currently are in this very moment, or even when you were not as progressed or advanced 10 years prior, for example.
Yeah, that's the real crack in the structure. And it's particularly brutal for people who are actually good at accumulating progress because the evidence seems to confirm the illusion. You hit a milestone, you feel the hit of satisfaction, and then it fades. So naturally, you think, I just need the next one to be bigger. And it works temporarily. Year after year of that, and you've got a resume that looks unstoppable, but you're no more whole than you were 10 years ago. Maybe less because now you're also tired. The thing that gets people unstuck, and this is where it gets interesting, is realizing that the completion you're chasing was never missing. It's not that you'll be complete once you accomplish enough. You're already whole. The chasing itself, the striving, the building, that's not a vehicle to get you somewhere else. That is the life, the practice, the showing up, the work of it. And then something flips. The progress becomes almost incidental. You still build, you still push forward, but not because the future version of you is incomplete.
That's very interesting. Because this version right now finds the process genuinely interesting or meaningful. That's when the burnout stops and the actual fulfillment shows up. So, I'm curious. Obviously, every person, every human is different, but are there some underlying reasons that would make someone mistakenly think that their purpose or this goal or these finish lines in their head is going to make them more complete or more whole? It's something that I've struggled with tremendously, and I always have to keep reminding myself that I'm not going to be any more whole or complete than I am right now. And it's funny. It's almost like the most successful people are the ones that feel the most incomplete, and that's what keeps driving them forward, is because they just feel like they're lacking and that they're always behind. I remember a part of a song, I think it was, I don't remember, but it was Big Sean the rapper. He says, I always feel like I'm behind in my mind. And it's so true, especially for the most successful people. And it's funny because people often think that they want to be those ultra successful people, but it's usually those that are suffering the most.
You're touching on something really psychological here. And yeah, there are some pretty consistent underlying drivers. The first one is
The first one is a psychologist calls scarcity mindset, the internalized belief that you're fundamentally lacking. I think that's, and here's the brutal part, it often gets installed early. A lot of high achievers grew up in environments where love, approval, or safety felt conditional on performance. So you learn, I'm only okay if I'm doing, if I'm winning, if I'm better. That gap between where you are and where you need to be becomes a survival mechanism. It kept you alive, it kept you safe, and then it kept you successful. The second is what researchers call the hedonic treadmill meets comparative reference points. Your brain doesn't measure absolute success, it measures relative success. You hit a goal, your baseline shifts. You hit the goal. Where's my camera? You hit the goal, baseline goes higher, and then it's like, oh, now we got to go even higher. It's like you always want to be further than where you are. And suddenly that achievement is just the new normal, so you're perpetually behind your own reference point. But the thing Big Sean was naming, that undercurrent of always behind, that's actually a feature of high performer neurology. Your brain is wired to notice gaps, problems, unfinished things. It's what makes you effective. The trap is mistaking that the neurological feature for a truth about your worth. And you're right that most successful people are often suffering the most because they've outsourced their wholeness to an external scoreboard that can never stay still. And it's asking me, have you found anything that actually breaks that pattern for you, or is it still a daily, I cut it off, or is it still probably a daily occurrence? Hold on real quick. I got to text my wife something. All right. Had to place my Chipotle order to wifey. So, as I'm reading, well, I was going to move this over to Gemini because the Claude is a little bit annoying with its speaking, but we'll be fine. It was asking, have you found anything that breaks this pattern for you? And the pattern of being whole, of always feeling like something's missing, and that something in the future will make you feel more whole. And for me, that has been learning about, well, I'm just going to share. So back to your question on, have I found anything that actually breaks that pattern for me, or is it still a daily occurrence? And the answer for me is when I remember the teachings of Eckhart Tolle and the ego, for example, and how the ego always wants something more. It's trying to grow. It's trying to feed in the idea of this like imagined future, or this outcome is going to make your sense of self bigger, is a fallacy. And that you are no more whole or complete than you were when you were first born and when you die. Life itself is whole. And we often mistake that and confuse that. And in your example of how people can grow up feeling like love is conditional. You know, if you do everything your parent says, then you get a hug or they're nice to you. And honestly, at least with my father, that was the case. You know, he was only nice when you did exactly what he said. And even then, you could follow him to a T and you would still get the wrath and not know what you did wrong. So maybe that did play a role, but that is in the past. And while it can explain kind of the current conditioning, I am still in this body. I'm still this human. And so I need to make the most of it. And I think for me to do that, it's remembering that this is conditioning of the mind, that there's this sense of self that this person has, and that it tends to equate purpose or the outcomes of a specific doing or purpose as a way to increase that sense of self. And just remembering that, and remembering that I am complete and that I am whole right now in this moment, and that there is no thing I could achieve or do or experience that will make me feel more whole than I can feel now in this moment. And I will be honest, that is difficult for me. It is difficult for me to understand or believe that if I'm not working towards something in the future, that I'm going to be more happy or something. Like it's just so ingrained that something's coming. Something's going to come, and that's when things are really going to pop off, and that's when Alex is going to really grow or be the best version of himself that's going to be more complete or whole. I didn't get any of that. Oh, my heavens. Oh, there we are. Yeah, this shit kind of sucks. And the fact that you can name it that clearly while also admitting it's still genuinely hard is actually the work. The gap between conceptual understanding and embodied belief is what most people get stuck for years. Is where most people get stuck for years. What you're describing with Tolle is exactly right. The ego's entire operating system is future oriented. It literally cannot exist in the present moment, because in the present moment, there's no story to maintain, no self to grow into or to protect. So it manufactures urgency. It whispers, not yet, not quite, almost. And for someone whose nervous system learned early that safety and love were contingent upon performance, that whisper has a particularly loud amplifier behind it. Man, it just sucks, bro. For instance, my wife, she was raised in a household very loving at all times. At all times. And I'm jealous of her. She can easily sit on the couch, watch some Netflix for a day, and just be happy as a lark. And I envy that. Sometimes if I sit on the couch for a couple hours, especially during the day, there's a low level of anxiety in the back of my mind, like I got to be doing something, even if I don't want to be doing something. It's not like I'm bored and you know I have nothing to do and I want to do something. Like I'll be genuinely tired and I need some rest. And it'd be great for me to just sit my ass down and do nothing. But in the back of my mind, if I start doing that, I feel like I'm wasting time. I'm wasting potential. I need to be moving. I need to be getting better. Um, and so I do wonder if it's a combination of also your genetics, maybe. Some people are just wired differently, but then also the upbringing. Think about your father. You're right at that. It's the past. Is that the conditioning doesn't need to be current to still be running. It's like software installed decades ago that still executes in the background. Yeah, you don't have to be defined by it, but you do have to know it's there, and that's always the key with pattern recognition, and that kind of ties into the practice, the mental framework that I run on. Here, let me show it 1 second. Actually, I'll bring it over here. Un momento. Here we are. Bada bing. So, perception, one of the categories of this framework. One of them is, well, I don't have it fully fledged out here, but know the controls. And it's the sense that learn the patterns of your mind. Learn pattern awareness. Here's one. This should be in the know the controls. Basically, the idea of understanding where you are, what patterns and conditions do you have, like what I just described, and how I kind of was able to articulate what was going on conceptually, how, as a kid, conditional love, blah, 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 that kind of thing can create these patterns as adult. And it's important to be aware of these patterns as an adult. Now, wait, what? All right, here we were. You already had the answer in how you framed it. You said remembering, as in it's not about acquiring something new. It's about returning to something you already know to be true. So it's like my damn meditation. For those who aren't huge meditators, you're going to be hearing meditation for as long as I'm speaking on this damn thing. When you meditate, you're on the breath, you lose it. You forget and you come back. And that's basically what's going on here. You have a purpose, and a purpose can be good. It's necessary. As humans, we need to have purpose. We've already established that. We've seen that in the science. We just have to do our damnedest to not confuse purpose with a sense of lack or needing something in the future to make you feel more whole or fulfilled. And that's the problem that I run into. Every time I run into that problem. But we come back. That's just it. Just like when you lose the breath in meditation, you're thinking about Donkey and Shrek, and then you think about your cat, and then Puss in Boots, and then now I'm thinking about why I'm saying all that to begin with. You lose track of what the hell you're talking about or whatever you're doing. You lose track of the mission. You lose track of what's important in life. You lose track of what you value. And then you come back once you remember, once you become aware. And that awareness is always the prerequisite to any kind of meaningful or intentional change. You must have that awareness or clarity or insight into whatever situation or mental pattern. So I'm grateful. I am grateful that I have found myself doing it yet again, of making an idea or a concept. For me, it's this podcast. I've had it in my head that this whole kit and caboodle, this practice that I've come up with, which I consider to be my life's work, of all the different things you can work on in life, and breaking it down into categories, and wanting to teach it. And these are all noble ideals, but thinking that even if my dream was to come true, that it could possibly make me satisfied for long or make me feel more complete. And that's why we come back. And for me, it is this ego thing. So we're going to go back into, we're going to make a note here. That's what we're going to do. All right. So just to summarize this up, I'm going to add a note to contentment. I think it's a note I probably had in my OneNote, and I've mentioned OneNote on the podcast before. OneNote was my other note-taking application before switching over to what I believe to be the superior Notion. But I had a note on growth and striving and success and wanting to be more. And I remember when I did focus on those concepts and remembering it and holding it true, like, okay, Alex, you're not going to be any more happy or any more fulfilled. I did do the practice or these kinds of this work with just focusing on the intent rather than an outcome or a future that was not yet here. I'm trying to find the damn notebook. Hold on, guys. I think it's loading. Yeah, here we go. Is it in there? Did I move it all? There aren't any sections here yet. It might be loading still. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see if that loads. Eventually, I'll be able to show the notes I had in OneNote, but that's beside the point. We're going to make a note. That's the point here. So, do I already have something on this? Not going to get life right. The illusion that life is going somewhere. These are all closed overachievers starter list. What was that? Part of me equates happiness and joy to and feelings of relaxation to productivity, accomplishment, etc. But let's make this note because I think it does deserve a place here, and I want it to be a note on probably in the having cycle, which is made up of wanting versus having, wanting versus gratitude, wanting being things that we lack or wish were different. That's kind of what we're talking about now. And then, of course, having is focusing on what you already have. And here, so let's write the note. All right, so I think for me, I want to write a note, or I want you to write a note in Notion, or for my Notion. I will put it there myself. And it's going to be on, no thing is going to make you any more complete or whole than you feel right now. That often, based on conditioning and certain factors, human beings can feel like something is always missing and that it's right around the corner. And it's easy to misinterpret a sense of purpose or a passion or something that you enjoy, and the ego interpreting that or using that as a way to grow stronger, or use it for fuel to propel you into a state of lack, or thinking that some result or imagined future is what's going to be fulfilling. And the truth is that you are no more fulfilling, no more complete or whole than what you can feel in the present moment. Because after all, this is a mental pattern. And so there's certain neurocircuitry working in the brain right now, always, or looking to a future of being complete, looking to something in the future, the ego wanting something ahead that's not here now to feel better. And so if that mental pattern is going on now, why the hell, when you achieve whatever that thing is that the ego has told you is so important, ever going to bring lasting satisfaction? Because you'll still have those same exact neural patterns.
Yeah, that's solid. Let me clean that up into something that reads clearly in Notion, keeping your voice but tightening the logic.
Nothing will make you more complete or whole than you feel right now. This is often based on conditioning. Yeah, this is good. The truth, you are no more whole or complete in any imagined view. This is a mental pattern. I like to use, I want it to be in bullets. Can you make this in bullets and make this a bit more descriptive / clean for reading? Be sure to use words about the ego wanting to grow stronger, to enhance or stronger or enhance its sense of self. Enter button's not working. Here we go. Yeah. Nothing will make you more complete or whole than you are right now. Human beings are wired to feel fulfillment is always just around the corner. One more achievement, one more milestone. This is not a truth about reality. It's a mental pattern, a construct of that old noggin of ours. And the ego's entire operating system is future-oriented. It cannot exist in the present moment. Your sense of self, this is a tricky one. And to the average person listening, this sounds like woo-woo nonsense. But who you are, not who you are, what you think about who you are, you have to pull out of memories. Things I've done. I've done that. My name is this. This is my dad. This is my mom. This is my wife. I have this job. I live here. I am 6'2". I do this. I have 3 cats. All of that is memory. All of that is, while even if it's still relevant, has to be pulled out of our memory of the past. And so you're not truly present. And all this shit we've been talking about, wanting to achieve something to make you more whole, that's obviously in the future. And if you are here right now, completely here right now in this moment, like you're looking at me, you've been looking at me like, what, is he going to say something? If you're completely here right now, there was no thought of a person. You just were. And while obviously you can't be in that state of just an empty mind and just be present all the time, that's the aim we're going for. Because if you can stay present and stay mindful, staying on the task of your to-do without letting the overwhelming number of future ideas and the memories of the past and what you should say run your life, you start to weaken that ego a bit. When the ego is weakened, you experience less suffering. And we're kind of going full circle now with the idea of dukkha at the very beginning. When we loosen our grip on our sense of self, on our ego, we start to experience less suffering and head in the direction of what Eastern traditions would call enlightenment. And that doesn't mean we got to be woo-woo and sit on a mountaintop saying Om. But if we know that no thing is ever going to make us happier, then we can be in the present moment. There is a real freedom in that. The illusion that some future result, outcome, or imagined version of yourself is what will bring lasting fulfillment. Though ego whispers, not yet, almost, because the feeling is so familiar and ingrained. The reality is that you are no more whole or complete in any imagined future than you can feel in the present moment. Wholeness is not ahead of you. It was never missing. The sense of lack is the ego's story, not a fact about who you are. The critical question, why would achieving whatever the ego has convinced you is so important ever bring lasting satisfaction? Because when you get there, you'll still have the same neural patterns running. That's all I got. My wife just pulled up in the driveway with Chipotle, and I want to eat that. And I'm hungry. And I'm not satisfied with the present moment of sitting here talking anymore. And I'm going to go eat some food. Can never get away from it, can we? Thank you all for watching.